Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome once again to the Newsman Weekly Podcast, episode number 41. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today. This is episode number 41 because we did a special bonus episode that dropped on March 21st, i.e. last Friday. It was a long-form interview with Mansfield native and Iditarod musher Matthew Failer, who recently finished his 14th version of the last great race across Alaska. If you missed that interview, please go back and check it out. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. And my thanks once again to local country singer Luke Watson for crafting this show's theme song, Smoke and Drink Indeed. My thanks also to the great folks at Relax It's Just Coffee for sponsoring this weekly adventure into audio madness. Had to drink some other coffee when I was out of town this past weekend.
Oh, no.
Just didn't come close. Folks, you got to visit Relax It's Just Coffee today in downtown Mansfield. Tell them the old newsman sent you. Please, tell them that so they know somebody's listening. I thank you. I'm joined once again today by Zac Hiser, the executive producer of the Newsman Weekly. Good morning, Zac.
Morning.
I see your beloved Cleveland Cavaliers are continuing to crumble, now having lost 4 of their last 5 before beating the bejesus out of a pretty overmatched team Sunday. But clearly this season is over, isn't it? I mean, the Cavs are done.
Sure. Yeah, whatever. We're just waiting until the playoffs. I'm going to deflect your question, and we're going to talk about March Madness for a second.
Oh, look at you deflecting my question.
Because I forgot about the NBA, because, it's the best weekend in sports, in my opinion. The first round of the NCAA tournament. There's
really?
Just constant basketball on. And
64 teams that I didn't watch play a single second all season long.
However,
and now they're all playing at the same time.
You're not going to talk about how you were the top 3,000 in the nation, your bracket?
That just shows you don't have to know anything.
Well, yeah, that's the fun of it. Anything could happen.
I did it in 15 minutes before I went out to the home show last week.
And your bracket was like in the 99th percentile for the first day or day and a half.
Yeah, in NCAA basketball is just, I don't know. I don't know anybody that plays anymore.
No, I don't either. It's, I agree. NBA is way better, but, you got to respect the tournament.
So who do you think the Cavs will draft with their first pick once they're bounced from the playoffs? I don't even know
if they have a first-round pick. They're going to win the championship, so they'll have a very late first-round pick.
All right. Richie, you got anything? Because I'm also joined by Grant Ritchey from Knox Pages, the official videographer of the Newsman Weekly for at least one more week. Richie, what'd you think about the NCAA basketball tournament, and was it all quiet on the Southern Front this past weekend?
It was, I just was nestled at home watching the March Madness games, and I think the reason why I love March Madness so much is because of the gamification of like the people making their brackets and stuff. It's very like fantasy football-esque for me. Like I have never watched Maryland. I was rooting for Maryland so hard last night against Colorado State because I had them winning my bracket. You had like a 3 buzzer beater winner. Well, it wasn't buzzer beater, but I think it was like 3 seconds left, and then Maryland comes in, and then Queen gets the shot off the rim to win the game. So I think it's the gamification of it that does it for me.
It is the best part, watching these random ass teams for the first time and acting like you went to college there. I was at Rancho Fiesta. I was like, hey, can you guys turn on the Creighton-Auburn game?
And they said what?
Lifelong Creighton fans.
They said K?
Some of these schools have to be fake names, like like Creighton. Never heard of that. So
High Point.
Yeah, High Point.
I am intrigued by the fact that in the space of a 38-second rant, Richie used the word gamification twice.
Isn't that what it is? I mean,
I don't know. I'm just intrigued by the fact that I think you've created a word. I'll contact Webster's and we'll see.
Okay.
Why don't you look that up, Richie?
Gamification.
See if that word actually exists.
It does exist. The application of typical elements of game playing.
Look at you.
To other areas of activity, typically as an online marketing technique.
And you went to Ohio University and you still came up with that word. Somebody was paying attention. Man. Hey, folks, we got another great show for you today. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by City of Mansfield Finance Director Kelly Blankenship. Yes, it's tax time across the country, the state, and yes, the city of Mansfield. Kelly's going to bring us up to speed on what you need to know in terms of your city income tax obligations.
Yeah, I still need to pay my city income taxes for my past year.
There you go.
Isn't it just filled out in your paycheck or can you opt
gotta
out of
file.
that?
You got to file.
If you live in the city.
Right.
I
okay.
don't live in the city.
I do.
So, yeah. You're a scofflaw, and I think Kelly will make a citizen's arrest and promptly take you
That's
into
fine.
custody.
That's fine. I could use the day off work.
All right. Well, Mansfield City Council last week also approved the city's 2025 budget. We'll get Kelly's thoughts on that spending plan and her observations about the city's financial health overall. We're also going to spend a few minutes today with Nan McCartney and Sandy Messner, two of the folks who are involved with Mansfield Rising 2.0. Richland Source is publishing those participants' 8 or 9 ideas in a series of articles, correctly dubbed the Ideas of March. Nan and Sandy will talk about what they have planned. These 9 new ideas are an extension of the original Mansfield Rising plan developed in 2018. That framework, the framework developed through Mansfield Rising, has underpinned dozens of redevelopment projects since it was released. So stay tuned for those conversations. Before we get into all that, though, let's talk about some local news. 3 Galion police officers were credited last week with saving the lives of an adult and a child, I believe the child was 4 years old, from a smoky house fire on East Atwood Street. Galion Police Chief Ryan Strange issued a press release praising the life-saving work of officers Tim Duncan, Kevin Schaefer, and Austin Chaplin.
Tim Duncan, Hall of Famer.
Yes, he was. According to the chief, I don't think it's the same Tim Duncan.
Oh, okay.
It could be, I guess. According to the chief, the 3 officers in the Galion Fire Department were dispatched March 17th at 9:18 a.m. on the report of a house fire. The resident said they were trapped upstairs due to the smoke and had a 4-year-old child. Strange said the trio of officers were first to arrive on the scene and they forced entry into the house. They found the downstairs blanketed with smoke and they could hear the resident calling for help from upstairs. He said Duncan was able to make his way upstairs and escort the resident and the small child through the smoke and outside to safety. Chief said, quote, "I'm extremely proud of these officers' selfless dedication to protecting the citizens of Galion. Because of their quick actions, they helped save the lives of the resident and their young child." So congratulations to those 3 Galion police officers for saving 2 lives last week. $250,000 grant from the Richland County Foundation is going to pay for the restoration of the historic Vasbinder Fountain in Mansfield Central Park. The fountain was donated to the city of Mansfield on July 4th, 1881. No, I did not cover the original dedication ceremony. It was donated by David and Jane Vasbinder. It will be taken completely apart and shipped to a company for a complete restoration of the historic structure on the south side of the park, on the south side of Park Avenue East. Several layers of paint will be sandblasted off. Parts of the fountain that need to be recast will be recast. Turns out there's a foundry in Georgia that owns the original molds for the fountain, and they'll recast the portions of it that need to be done. Concrete that was placed into the 9-foot diameter bowl during a 1970s restoration is going to be removed. And the entire fountain is going to be replumbed to improve the water show that the historic fountain provides. It'll be reassembled by June 26th of 2026 with the potential for rededication 145 years after it was originally opened for its watery business. Done about the same time as the Main Street Corridor Improvement Project is scheduled for completion.
All right. Love a good fountain. Love a good water show.
Water show. You know, that's what we all need, more water features.
Right.
And maybe we can make it big enough it could be the next city pool. People could swim in the fountain. Ritchie would probably fit, but I don't know that the rest of us will. Hey, law enforcement agencies around Richland County are going to launch their local version of the Blue Envelope Project. It's an effort gaining steam around Ohio and the country to ease communication between individuals on the autism spectrum and law enforcement during traffic stops and other motor vehicle incidents. The plan, which will include the Richland County Sheriff's Office, Mansfield Police Department, and police departments in Ontario, Shelby, Lexington, Belleville, and Butler, will be rolled out April 1st, which is World Autism Month. A large study done in 2017 by the National Autistic Society found a third of teens who have autism without intellectual disability do indeed earn a driver's license. Nearly 90% of them do so within 2 years of getting their learner's permit. The core idea of the Blue Envelope program is straightforward yet impactful, according to those who helped design it. The Blue Envelope program is an effort to ease communication between individuals on the spectrum and law enforcement officers during traffic stops and other motor vehicle incidents. It involves a specially designed envelope that contains the driver's essential documents, license, registration, and a contact card. It also features critical communication guidelines on its exterior, specifically tailored to assist law enforcement officers in recognizing and adapting their approach when interacting with an autistic driver. The envelopes are covered with instructions for both the driver and the police officer making the stop. It includes reminders to the officer about stimuli that may distract the driver and cautions to the driver about sudden movements. It also includes a checkbox to indicate if the driver is verbal or nonverbal. And that came up last week at the city council meeting. So I thought I'd pass that along. And now, Richie, are you ready for our dumb criminal of the week story?
Let's get it.
All right. A South Carolina man was shot and killed after he accidentally set off a shotgun booby trap last week that was allegedly built by a family member. 34-year-old was gravely wounded after he was struck by a shotgun blast after arriving at his incarcerated uncle's vacant home in St. Matthews, South Carolina, according to the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office. He was transported to a nearby hospital but eventually succumbed to his injuries, the Sheriff's Office said. They said at the time the residence may have been booby-trapped. A perimeter was set around the residence as deputies slowly made entry to the home, and they encountered a shotgun that was rigged at the back door to go off once anybody tried to gain entry. A further sweep of the residence showed the front door was barricaded shut with no other occupants inside. Authorities are now trying to pin murder charges on the owner of the home and the dead man's uncle, who's currently behind bars in Maryland for an unrelated non-fatal shooting in January. Because he's currently jailed, they may want to add possession of a weapon by a convicted felon charge, and Calhoun County Sheriff Thomas Summers told the media they may add additional charges. Sheriff's Department believes the house was booby-trapped with the intent of harming law enforcement officers, and not sure how long the trap was set up.
So was he the one who set it up, or someone else set it up, and he just like walked into it?
Well, it would appear the uncle, who's currently behind bars, set up the booby trap, hoping to get a law enforcement officer. Instead, he got his nephew.
And the nephew didn't know about it, I'm assuming? Probably not, right?
I would hope he didn't if he opened the door and set off a shotgun-based booby trap. But
it's like some Home Alone.
Really
Home
is.
Alone
Yeah. Folks, you cannot make this stuff up. But you know what? That's enough for now. Let's take a quick break. We got a lot of show to do today. When we come back, we'll be joined by Nan McCartney and Sandy Messner, part of the great new ideas coming out of Mansfield Rising 2. And then we'll have Kelly Blankenship, the City of Mansfield Finance Director. So please stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly Podcast. Joining us now are Nan McCartney, the marketing graphic designer for K.E. McCartney and Associates in Mansfield, and Sandy Messner, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Richland Area Chamber and Economic Development. Both of them are a part of Mansfield Rising 2.0, which is a second group of residents who went to South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, to help look for new ideas for the city of Mansfield. Those ideas are being rolled out now in a series of articles in Richland Source this month, which we've dubbed, believe it or not, the Ideas of March. If we'd rolled them out in April, they would have been the Ideas of...
It wouldn't have hit the same.
Okay, that's true. Well, the Ides of March. Yeah. That didn't end well for anybody. But, well, good morning to both of you. Thanks for joining us and getting up so damn early.
Oh, good morning. It's good to be here.
Right. First question is for both of you. I'll let you decide who gets to go first. How did you get involved in what's been dubbed Mansfield Rising 2.0?
Okay, I'll go. So at my job with the chamber, I'm really passionate about community development and getting involved with projects that elevate Mansfield. So just naturally, when I was asked to be part of Mansfield Rising, it really fit well with what I was already doing, and just, my inner passion to make the area I live in and my family lives in even better. So it was really exciting to be asked to be part of that.
How about you, Dan?
I kind of got involved through the first group with their projects, specifically the Main Street project. K.E. McCartney did the engineering plans for that, so they had something come up, the RAISE grant they applied for, and that was kind of a huge document that they needed help with, and I designed it for them, so I worked really closely along with them in that process, and I think it was through that they just asked me to be a part of 2.0, and I was really excited about it.
By the way, Paul Kimmerling from Relax It's Just Coffee was over this morning. He's our official sponsor of the podcast, and he was bringing us coffee this morning, and he said, make sure you ask Nan about her artwork, because he's very impressed with that. So tell us a little bit about artwork that you're doing or have been doing lately.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I went to school and studied illustration. So I've always had a passion for art and designing, and now I get to do that for my family, which is nice, but I still like to push my creative boundaries outside of that, because civil engineering is pretty right angles.
Yeah, there's a lot of straight lines
in
civil engineering.
Yeah, and I do some small things throughout the city. I've done coffee labels for Paul. I did the Cowgirl coffee label with the girl with her boots and her hat, and I did a series of stickers for Richland Source not too long ago. I did a small mural over at the gym, Katana Fitness, and I just do what I can. I love illustrating. If anyone needs any illustrations,
I didn't know you did murals.
I haven't done any really large scale.
Yeah.
I've done a 9-foot one for a private client, but
nice.
Yeah, I would love to do murals. I'm open to doing murals.
There were two things I was ordered by my second grade teacher to never do again. One was sing, and the other was draw. So, I can't draw a straight line much as I use a ruler, and I can't draw a straight line. So I have no idea how artists actually.
I can't sing either, so we have that in common.
Well, very good. At least I'm not the only person in the room who can't sing, other than maybe Richie, and we don't know for sure about him. But all right, you got down to Austin, Texas. Now, I was in Austin at a newspaper conference, good Lord, 40 years ago. And it was a different world to me even then. What was it like for you? Had you guys been to Austin before, and what did you think of your visit there?
Yeah, I'd never been to Austin. I know when we were driving in, it was really cool. Just I remember seeing all the murals on. It was very colorful.
Yeah.
Like all the houses were colorful, the buildings, and downtown was super active. Lots of people walking around, music, and it was just incredibly vibrant and alive. Yeah, that really caught my eye when we first arrived.
Nan, what did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I had never been there either, and it was just exploding with life and color and murals and activity. And with the conference going on, there was just so many people, and it was like the whole city was a set pretty much for the week, and it was just really cool to be there and be a part of it and walk around and get to experience even the small things just walking down the street.
Now, I know there are lots of sessions at South by Southwest, lots of things you can go to. How did you guys decide among the group who was going to go to what, and what kind of impressed you the most?
That was really hard. It was hours of just going through the list and trying to narrow it down, and then you had your favorites, but it still ended up being maybe you couldn't make it there in time, so you ended up going to this, and we would just text in our group chat and
plan A, B, C.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we were also divided up into groups, so each of us really had something we were gonna focus on. I was government and civic.
Mine was arts and culture.
Yeah, so our first Mansfield Rising meeting, I remember Jay said, just go and do whatever inspires you. I'm like, oh, there's this session on finding ET. I'm like, that has nothing to do with government and civic.
I gotta
Or
tell
maybe
you,
it does. I don't know.
When I started here, Jay told me the same thing. Just go and do whatever
Yeah.
inspires you. And the second day, he said, "Well, maybe not that." So
Yeah, so we kind of had those two ground rules. One, if we see a session on what we're there for, definitely go for those. But then also do what lights us up. And yes, that's what.
That made it really interesting because there was things that I went to that I probably would have never, like, I just happened to be in the area at the time. There was one that I didn't even have on my list. I was just close, and I stepped in, and it ended up that the speaker was an Ohio State graduate, and he knew Mansfield, and I got to talk to him after, and it was really cool.
What was he speaking about? Do you recall?
His project was called like Meeting 1,000 Strangers or 1,000 People's Happiness, but he packed up everything, drove around in, I think it was Honda Civic, for a year, and went to like 1,000 different cities and met people and asked them different questions about life, about the meaning of life, what they would do differently, what the best things in life are, and he just shared the answers and made a book. He photographed each person he talked to, and it was really cool.
Now, when you guys went down, I think you mentioned Jay a few minutes ago, Jay Allred, who's the publisher here at Richland Source. And I think he and Jen Kime, two of the originals from Mansfield Rising, went with you.
Yep,
How hard was
counselors.
How hard was it to shake their tail away from you and get away and go out and have fun that mom and dad didn't need to see all the time?
Oh, it wasn't like that at all.
Oh,
not
okay.
like that.
Yeah, they were the party animals.
Yeah.
They were having fun.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
They wanted us to get out and experience it, do
They
whatever
were
we
very
want.
encouraging to just
yeah.
fully
Yeah.
immerse ourselves and enjoy everything that Austin and the festival had to offer that week. I went to a show at Austin City Limits with Jay one night, and it was the type of music I've never. Some drone band, Peruvian drone band or
Peruvian
something.
drone, and I'm sure Jay was just jonesing to go see a good Peruvian
it was me,
drone
him, and
band.
Ori,
Yeah.
and it was a great time. But it was something I would have never done.
But
without them.
the music there, South by Southwest has a music festival, right?
Right.
And that was the following week.
Yeah,
Right.
so
You
some
guys
of
didn't
the
get to stay for that.
musicians, no, they were coming in, but
Yeah.
while we
Still
were
got
there,
to see some music.
some, but there also was the movies and
comedy.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
right,
So there were
that's
some
right.
film releases happening while we were there. And that
I
was
didn't get to go to any movies, but I did go to a couple comedy shows.
Yeah, I went
and
to
to-
the Star Trek Discovery premiere.
Now, is that the original Star Trek, or is that the eighth
It's like
iteration?
the
of
eighth.
Star
It
Trek?
was. I had never watched Star Trek Discovery, but I'm like, I'm gonna go to this,
Yeah.
and all the actors were there. It was really fun.
Well, Star Trek for me ended with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. I mean, once Spock and Kirk were gone, and you guys are way too young to remember that show. But now, Nan, what idea or ideas did you come back with that you think are really going to be something you want to push for in Mansfield, and what are you going to help to do to kind of bring that idea to fruition?
Yeah. So I had a ton of ideas. I went through my notebook this morning and kind of just like refreshed, and it's just packed full. But I knew I wanted to do something that kind of got more to the core of Mansfield, because a lot of the 1.0 projects were cosmetic things that are going to be really great for our city and for growth, but not necessarily helping the people that might need help the most. So that was kind of a common theme in all of our projects in 2.0, was to get to the heart of the issue, to help the people of Mansfield. And I really wanted to do that. And I just researched afterwards. I thought it was going to be a simple solution.
There are no
not.
simple
Yeah,
solutions
no.
in this world, are there?
No. But I did a lot of research, and I came across this principle called housing first. And I think that it could be a really great thing for Mansfield, and honestly for anywhere. It's been used all over the world now, all over America, in different cities. It's a kind of a basic framework, and you adjust it to meet your city's needs. And the idea is that people are eligible for housing first, and then they get the help they need. So regardless of the circumstances, regardless of criminal history, regardless of financial needs, regardless of addictions, you're allowed into housing. And then you're provided with the necessary steps to get help from there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of flipping it upside down, really helping people, and then so that the goal is they can exit the cycle and then be self-sustainable on their own, not re-entering and repeating history, and kind of just really helping people.
Yeah, there are like 2 or 3 basic kinds of needs in life. One is food, and, well, obviously, and another is shelter.
Right.
And what you're talking about seems like one of the basic things that we got to be able to help people obtain.
Right.
And this is like a philosophy, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of a framework, like you said.
Yeah.
So talk about a little bit about some of the partners that would be involved with that, like how you envision that playing out in Mansfield.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know exactly where my role in this is because I'm not an expert on the subject. I'm not trying to take over because I know there are a ton of people in Mansfield that I've talked to that I haven't talked to yet that are working really hard to help people that are doing great things already. So it would be kind of just uniting everyone. So it would look like an umbrella over all of the organizations that already exist in Mansfield, just bringing them together, making sure their funding is being used most effectively it can be, and just all working together for one common goal so that we're not kind of fighting against each other unintentionally and really just getting rid of the problem.
All right, and Sandy, kind of the same question for you. What's the kind of big idea that you'd like to push forward?
So when I went to South by Southwest, I wasn't at that time, really sure what I was going to bring back. But with the sessions I went to, there was an overarching theme of it takes a community to solve really big issues, and no one can do it alone. I went to a session on gun violence and discussing how big of a national problem it is. So those really struck me, and I had experienced gun violence about 1.5 years ago, and I knew exactly just how devastating it could be to a person's psyche. And just listening to the voices of people in our area who, had been through some pretty scary times, I thought this is something that we need to collectively come together and help survivors of gun violence, and not, put our heads in the sand, and actually help and bring people together. So similar to Nan, you get back from South by Southwest, and it's like there's a million different ideas that were in our heads. So, it got down to research. And I had my own experience and knew what, how it affected me, but I wanted to hear from other people directly. So I partnered with NECIC, and we put together a panel of survivors of gun violence. So the panel were 5 survivors, and the audience was city officials, county officials, the police department, sheriffs, hospitals, schools. So the audience were the people that have to talk with survivors and help them through this situation. And it was very mind-blowing, mind-opening for everybody in the room of what survivors go through. There's a lot of players doing really great things, but we found that there was some disconnect, and people were falling through the cracks, and they wanted to be heard. They wanted to be a part of something. They wanted a solution. And it was a very, very powerful meeting. And so from that, it just became evident that we needed to connect our resources that are already available. We needed immediate help for someone who is going through that extreme trauma, and it needs to be absolutely accessible, like from where they are, which means in their home, because hard to talk about, and not everyone understands, and it's difficult to even ask for help. But if it's accessible and you don't have to go look for it, it's right there on your phone. That's treatment right now.
So this would be like an app that
Correct.
you would want to launch, and like Nan's idea, it kind of is like kind of cool because there's people already working on this problem in Mansfield. Right. So the biggest challenge, or one of the challenges, is just connecting people.
Exactly.
Making the solution just more available to the residents of Mansfield.
Right.
Would it be? I mean, this could go beyond just gun violence,
Absolutely.
right? It could be any sort of trauma or issues that people are experiencing.
Yeah, and that conversation came up a bit, but having a specific avenue, really solves that problem. If it's a general trauma in the beginning, someone might not see it as relevant to them. This is a way to get right to the root of the problem. And then as the model develops and evolves, then most definitely, I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, given your experiences in Austin, you've been back in town for a while now. Has the glow kind of worn off, or are you still bullish on Mansfield Rising 2.0 and the future of the city and your involvement in it?
I see so much happening with the momentum, definitely being in my position at the chamber and my involvement with the community, from city officials, county officials, to citizens, to businesses. I see a lot of movement and people wanting to get involved, and that's a cool thing to see people going from the sidelines to what can I do to help? And that's what it takes. And so hearing that daily from people, I'd say I'm definitely bullish.
And Nan, I know every day you get to look at Main Street and see the mess that you help make. So obviously, Main Street Corridor Improvement Project is a wonderful thing. It's just going to take a while. But same question to you. I mean, you've been back for a little while. Thoughts on Mansfield Rising 2.0 at this point?
Yeah, I'm still really excited about it. There was a quote that stood out for me. I used it as the opening for my presentation when I gave my pitch for Housing First. And it was, cynicism is easy. It's a cop-out. What's hard is to find hope and to keep it. And I think that's what we need in Mansfield, is to find hope and to keep it, because we have endless potential. We have a great location. We have so many great things. We have great history. We have great people. I think we only have an optimistic future.
Very good. Nan, Sandy, I'd like to thank both of you for coming in to talk about your ideas as part of Mansfield Rising 2.0.
And we'll link those. Like we said, we publish these on Richland Source. We'll link them in the show notes. Go leave feedback. There's a form at the bottom of each one of these articles, and there'll be 9 of them. And so go, tell these folks what you think of the ideas.
Very good. And folks, we are going to have some other people involved with the project in the next couple of weeks on the Newsman Weekly podcast, so keep your ears open for those discussions. But for now, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by City of Mansfield Finance Director Kelly Blankenship. So stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Newsman Weekly podcast. Joining us now is Kelly Blankenship, City of Mansfield Finance Director. Good morning, Kelly. Thanks for joining us so damned early.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's another glorious day in the city of Mansfield.
It is.
It's March. Spring has begun. Winter is behind us.
And tax season is upon us.
Oh, you're jumping the gun, but that's okay. We are going to talk about taxes here in a minute. Kelly, you're about 15 months, I believe, into your second term as finance director for the city. You had the gig from 2007 to 2011, and then you got elected again in November of 2023. So how are things going, and what are the biggest changes that you've seen in that office in the decade plus since you were last there?
Well, let me see. Would you prefer that I answer that question as to what is different this term versus last term, or what has transpired in my absence?
Both.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay. First, the first term that I served, I was obviously much younger than I am today.
God, weren't we all?
And I didn't have the level of maturity that I have today. I also was lacking in tactics of diplomacy. So coming into the boys club that was in existence back then with a lot of long-term employees in the administration level, I didn't take the time to gain their trust. So things that I said during that time of economic upheaval were not well taken. I was always sounding the alarm that we're headed to fiscal emergency. And every finance report that I presented to city council and the administration said that we're headed for fiscal trouble. You've got to do something. And I think I was just largely ignored. So it was difficult working with that administration and in that economic climate. Obviously, we did descend into fiscal emergency, but the city had in previous years built itself into contractual obligations that they couldn't afford, and there wasn't a budget stabilization fund like there is now. So there wasn't anything to fall back on. Thankfully, in the year since I've been gone, that has been remedied, and there is a budget stabilization fund now. I think people are more future focused than they were just what can we do today. So that has changed for the better. And really the reason that I wanted to jump back into this role is because there was the opportunity for real change with a brand new administration. I mean, everybody coming in was new. New mayor, new law director, new judges, all of us coming in, we're going to be basically, new at this. And I had good relationships with everyone before this. So I had already established that. And I knew that together we could work well as a team, and that this would be an opportunity to make some forward momentum for the city that I don't think was possible in the past.
Now, speaking of forward thinking, or maybe just at least equal thinking, City Council last week approved the final 2025 budget that you and Mayor Jody Perry assembled. I think it's really the first real budget the two of you have been able to put together. You both took office in January of 2024, and the council had approved at that point a temporary budget that was designed by the previous administration under Mayor Tim Thaker and Finance Director Lynn Stewart. But this was your first time with Jody putting this together. How was it working with the mayor, and what was your role in developing the spending plan that's going to take us through the rest of the year?
My role is always basically to tell the mayor how much money she's got to spend. I estimate revenue for all of the areas where money comes into the city from all of the different sources that we have. So that is how the budget starts. I give an estimation of the revenue and then set out my own departmental budget under my authority. And then we hear back from the other elected officials what they want in their budgets. And then, basically the mayor has to meet with her department heads to find out, what their spending plan is and whether the budget can accommodate everybody's goals.
Now, when you were looking at that, how much did that change? How much did your revenue expectations change from the temporary that was passed in December to the permanent that was approved last week?
Well, in estimating revenue, to be fiscally responsible, you've got to be conservative. And that conservatism, I'm going to make up words today.
Oh, well,
it's Monday.
Richie did earlier, so feel free.
It's Monday, make up new words day.
It's a real word, man. Gamification's a real word. You can look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, so was Game of Thrones, but we don't use that here. So please continue, Kelly. I apologize for Richie's rude interruption.
That's perfectly fine. Anyway.
He's got a nice mullet, doesn't he?
I love his mullet.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Truly.
Thank you.
It's magazine worthy. It's poster worthy in a salon.
Anyone who's listening who has a feature magazine, maybe you can reach me at gritchie@knoxpages.com, and we can work out a deal, perhaps.
He's also single.
Yes. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, we were talking about
taxes.
Money.
No, we're talking about money. We're not to the taxes part yet. We're not quite to that point, but we were talking about what revenue estimation might have done between the end of 24 and by the time City Council approved the permanent budget last week.
Okay. In estimating revenue, we're supposed to take a 5-year average of the last 5 years, but because of the pandemic level of revenue is included in that 5-year, we cut it out. So what we've been doing is a 3-year average that gets us a more realistic picture of what's happened. Unfortunately, in the past, when all of that stimulus money was put out into the community, we actually experienced a $3 million increase for about 3 years' time during that period. And then last year, everything was flat. Like the stimulus money's gone. Most of the funds that are out in the community are already spent. There's just a few little, pieces left.
And when you say flat, the majority of, just so people understand, the bulk of local revenue comes from municipal income tax, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so when you say it's flat, that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yes,
is there wasn't a big bump
right.
in income tax revenue.
Right. I mean, it's the largest source. It's the one that's prone to fluctuations and could have huge impact on our operations. So it's important that we get that right.
So did that change dramatically in the last 3 months in terms of what you're estimating for this year?
Well, we had to drop another $250,000 from the estimated revenue once we had final figures in from the end of the year, which is not good because we're used to everything inflating in price and having higher costs all around. We've got every union contract up for negotiation in the beginning of this term. And looking historically at what revenues have been, how they've been increasing, obviously everybody is expecting to get more and more money, but we're coming into a period now where we're going to be flat with revenue while all of these other expenses are going up. So I'm concerned about our future.
Now, are you involved in, when you're talking about unions, I think it's AFSCME, it's the FOP, it's the IAFF, the firefighters. Are you directly involved in those negotiations, or do you simply hand them numbers and say, here's what we've got, or how does that work for you?
We are finally, for the first time, involved in negotiations. I think it's important, especially with AFSCME, because I have AFSCME employees in my department, but it's important to have someone from finance at the table who's able to listen to the ideas from both sides and then come back and do the financial analysis at what all of the proposals look like and what it would actually mean for the city financially.
And without spilling the beans on breaking news about how negotiations are going, are we any closer with AFSCME? And I assume the FOP and the firefighters negotiations have at least started at this point?
Fire has started. They have met several times. FOP has not started yet, and AFSCME is set for fact-finding in April.
Okay. Well, very good. Now, your predecessor in the office, Lynn Stewart, as you did in your first term in office, she often told council she wasn't comfortable with the budget that they were voting on. She used to say, I think one of her favorite expressions was, the city is not living within its means. Are you comfortable right now that the city is living within its means with this budget and looking down the road a few years? Or give me your best guesstimate on where we're going financially.
Okay, here are my thoughts on the city's finances right now. See if you can follow me. Mine and Jody's goal together is to get the city to a balanced budget, which means that we'll take our estimated revenue for the year and then we'll build our spending plan around that estimated revenue without consideration of what is carried over from the previous year. In the 24 budget, we carried over, we had an ending cash of $8 million. And hijacked $7 million of that into the spending plan for 2023 or 2024. And at the end of 2024, we still had $8 million to carry over. So if we have the same level of carryover every year, we are spending within the estimated revenue. So it's possible to get there, but it's going to take some changes in everyone's thinking patterns to say that, this is what we have. Really, this is what we're spending. Take a closer look at what we're spending, what we actually need. And I think hopefully by the end of our term, we'll get the city there.
Now, you mentioned the budget stabilization fund. Explain what that is to people and what's currently sitting in that account.
It's the rainy day fund.
Rainy day fund.
The rainy day fund. It's a fund established to set aside monies in case of an economic catastrophe like we had in 2008, 2009. So the goal is to have 80% of the last year's spending set aside in that fund. We are currently at 90% of that goal with this year's budget.
Okay, so you think maybe next year we might be able to get to the goal, or no?
Well, that depends. We were counting on having some increase in revenue this year from the cannabis dispensaries, but now the state has taken that carrot away from us. So
of course they have, because they're the state and that's what they do.
Oh my golly, Jody and I went to OML lobbying day and met with both Representative John and Senator Romanchuk, and brought that up, and we were told that that's part of the revised code, and therefore it's subject to revision. So that was really disappointing, because I feel like that whole package was presented to us as a community. Like, if you allow these dispensaries, there's funding coming back into your community that's going to help with some of the problematic things that might arise. And now it's like, well, thank you for allowing the dispensaries. We're taking the money.
All of the money? Or
it still needs to be worked out, but it's going to be probably part of the next 2-year budget and not a separate resolution on its own, a separate bill.
I think cannabis supporters, and I'm neutral on this. I'm not a cannabis user at this point in my life. Maybe in a previous life when I was younger and
maybe a gummy every
attending Ohio University many years ago, way before Ritchie got there. But
he didn't inhale.
No, I didn't. You know what? That's one reason that's the only reason I could never vote for Bill Clinton. When he said I smoked but I didn't inhale. Okay, how dumb are you? It doesn't taste that good. If you're not inhaling, why are you smoking Meigs County Green? I mean, it didn't make any damn sense.
I did not inhale.
Yeah. But the thing is, I would think the cannabis people are going to come back once the state gets done gutting this law that people approved. And this time they're going to try to do something to the Constitution, which the state legislators can't change.
Right.
And that'll be the next step, I think, because, the state legislature basically is saying, Ohio residents, those of you who voted on behalf of this, you really didn't know what you wanted. So let us tell you what you wanted.
Please tell us what to do.
And if Marilyn, John, or Mark Romanchuk were sitting here right now, I'd tell them the exact same. In fact, get them on the show, Hiser.
All right.
I want them in here, and I want to say, why are you doing this? This is not what people voted for. Quit being mommy and daddy and telling people what it is they want. Because this is not what they voted for.
Why is it taxed so much, too, like compared to Michigan? It's like so much more expensive here than it is from the state.
Because the state wants to do away with income tax. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So they have to make it up somewhere. I mean,
I'm all in favor of doing away with income. I'm in favor of doing away with all taxes. Anarchy is the way to go.
I mean, how are they supposed to balance the budget then?
Well, they just don't have a budget. Everybody just live free.
It's a free-for-all.
Yes, exactly. Libertarians rule. Everybody just
If you want to be a policeman today, you're a policeman, but don't expect to be paid.
Yeah, that's it. Who did I run into the other day that was talking about that utopian kind of society where nobody has to work and you just get what you need? And I said, have you ever heard of Karl Marx? Because it was Marx that said, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. And the person I was talking to said, that sounds great. I said, that's communism, and it's never worked. It is not human nature to not work and people just give you stuff.
Sounds good, though.
Yeah, it certainly sounds good, but it's never worked and it never will. Hey, speaking of taxes, the tax filing deadline is almost here. April 15th is a date many people think of in terms of federal and state tax filing. But I believe the fact is the same deadline exists for the filing of municipal income tax returns or forms. So explain to us how this works, who's got to file a return with the city, And Hiser, listen up to this. What happens for those who don't?
Yeah. Well, everybody who lives or
El
works.
Salvador, gulags.
Well, bring back some coffee while you're down there, would you? Oh, by the way, thank you to Paul Kimmerling again this morning for bringing over coffee for the podcast crew. And many thanks for the sponsorship by Relax It's Just Coffee. It's a free commercial.
Yes.
You may continue.
Great. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. I will. Are you going to El Salvador?
He might have to.
If I don't pay my taxes, then
Oh.
I'll probably be sent there.
The
I do
scofflaw.
love El Salvador.
Yeah, there you go. Well, take him because he needs to. He's on the lam
Okay, let's
at
go.
this point.
Well, I got a letter too, but I took care of it, and you
Oh.
should too.
I know.
Yeah, before it's too late.
Nobody's
Just trying to help
immune.
you balance your budget
It'll be
with
a
all
knock.
the late fees. I'm
It'll
gonna
be
we
a knock on the
appreciate
door.
that. We appreciate it.
Because the tax department has vehicles now. I've seen them in the parking lot. So
We
they're
have one.
Okay, a vehicle. I apologize.
Mhm.
Vehicle, and they'll be coming to your house.
He might.
Do you guys have handcuffs? I mean, could they arrest him and take
No,
him
he
away?
serves summonses. He doesn't
Oh.
make arrests.
Okay, well, it'd just be a summons then.
Yeah.
All
You
right.
can report on that.
It's
I-
still
I
a
certainly
scary
will.
thing to, have somebody officially serve you
Yeah,
an official paper saying
yeah.
you're doing not the right thing.
All right, enough about me.
All
We're not
right.
making this personal.
All right, sorry.
Okay.
Talk to us about city income tax. Who's got to file returns? Who
Yes.
doesn't, and
Okay.
et cetera.
Everybody who lives and works in the city who has earned income of any kind owes Mansfield city tax. The people who have to file that tax form are people who live within the city boundaries. Included in that tax filing must be your Form 1040 from your federal return, including any schedules that accompany that, as well as your W-2, W-2Gs for you gambling fans.
Hey,
Again,
Yeah.
we're
Again,
looking at you.
looking at
I
you.
don't make
Heiser.
enough money
Okay,
gambling.
Yeah, that's what you tell the feds.
And any 1099s that you would have. So that's it. We are there from 8 to 4 to help anybody who needs their taxes filed for them. If you just bring all your documentation, we will take care of that for you. Just please don't wait until the last minute to come to the office. We get very, very, very busy. And, we were just talking about sending out delinquent letters. We have about 24,000 accounts in the city. For 2022, we sent out 8,000 letters to people who hadn't filed their taxes.
That's like a third.
Yes, so our compliance rate is like 67%. Can you imagine what it would be like if we had 100% compliance or even 90% compliance?
So does that necessarily equate to additional revenue, or is these just
No.
people who didn't file the paperwork, but their taxes probably got taken out of their paychecks?
Correct.
Okay.
Those are people who didn't file. And some of those are people who have moved out of the city that didn't let us know they moved. Some of those are people who file and owe. And, obviously we want to collect that money for the city. And some of those are people who file and don't owe, or haven't filed and don't owe. So it's a combination of, all kinds of different scenarios. But we don't know if they don't file.
Now, are the forms and things, are they available online that somebody can go to your website and download the forms to fill them out, or is that something that has to be done in person?
They can find all of the forms they need online. In fact, they can actually file online.
They don't actually have to come into the
They don't even
office.
have to come in. You can e-file everything. You can upload your W-2. You can upload your 1040. You can upload everything you need with your form, and then we will handle it all on the back side. And you don't even need to come in or send anything through the mail.
Now, if they do come into the city building to visit your office, what floor are you guys located on if they need to come in?
We're on the 7th floor.
7th floor.
Mm-hmm.
So they can go through the metal detector,
Mm-hmm.
which everybody has to pass through, including yours truly when I go into the city building. And I always love when they look at me and say, "So where are you going?" And, usually the smart ass in me wants to say, well, if you're writing a book, leave that chapter out. But,
To the bathroom.
Yeah, well, I just got to use the head. I'll be with you in a minute. But no, I understand because if folks are going to court, they don't want you taking your cell phones and things in there. But I always find that an interesting question. But
Yeah.
So when people come in, I know early on staffing and some turnover was an issue.
Yes.
in the finance department. How has that gone? Has it settled down? And do you have enough people to handle the massive amounts of folks that are now going to be coming in after they hear today's podcast to file those taxes, including Zac Hiser?
Well, when I first came in, I found that there were several employees whose had, one specific role was split up between several different people. So the first thing I did was kind of restructure the office into recreate job titles and job descriptions that kind of streamlined operations on the finance side. There wasn't much I could do on the income tax side because it was basically the director and then the court folks and then the tax clerks. So there wasn't much restructuring to do, or really any restructuring to do over there. Most of the time was spent on the finance side getting that in order. And now that I have that in order, this year I'm actually facing the shortage in income tax right at this critical time of year. So I was down I'm down 2 tax clerks right now, and the income tax director role is open. So I am actively interviewing for the income tax director. The finance clerk, or the tax clerks as we call them, are an AFSCME position. So those have to be filled through that process. I have one who moved in, so I will be hiring one externally there, and hopefully we can get that side of the office shored up before the end of tax season. I mean, it's a really kind of crazy time to be bringing people on and trying to train them, but that's the way we got to do it.
So, Hiser, you could apply for the tax director's job and then shield yourself from future prosecution.
Are you trying to get me to leave?
No,
That sounds like an
source?
ethics violation.
Well, it might be, Wait, government and ethics, that's an oxymoron right there, I'll just say. Now, I've kind of ended with this, Kelly. When you were running for office a couple of years ago, one of the things you told me is you thought Mansfield was poised for economic growth.
Yes.
What have you seen thus far, and are you still bullish on the city's kind of near-term future?
I am, actually. I think it's an exciting time to live here. There's so much change happening, and so much has happened. I think we're still riding that wave. I don't think it has crashed yet, and we might see that slow down in the next couple years as revenue slows, and the ARPA funds are already spent. They're all not spent, but they're already spoken for and have their assignments. But as those things play out in our economy, as we see some of the revitalization downtown, and the people starting to take more pride in the parks and the neighborhoods and coming out and being together more. There's housing going up all over the place now, and that wasn't happening before. So hopefully there will be bodies living in those houses, which means more people living in the city, which means more revenue and more ability for us to do things in the community that serve the residents.
I know that's something people have talked about, and I know I said it was going to be the last question, but your answer prompted another one. Trying to budget and survive through scarcity and cutting spending rather than trying to grow revenue. From your vantage point in the finance director's office, how important is it for you to assist in that, helping the administration to grow that revenue rather than just worry about controlling spending?
Well, one of the things I've been talking with the mayor about, when she has economic development ideas, is how to secure funding to make those happen. So my role isn't just in watching what is happening financially, but also in future planning and seeking out ways to help her make her dream come alive.
Now, I know one of the cool things that happened last week, and I was not aware of it, that you guys were able to use interest/investment income from the water treatment plant bond issue, which was, I believe, passed in 2022, was $35 million. But you guys were actually able to use the interest income off of that bond to authorize another $1.8 million repair to a water line. So from your standpoint, that's something else your office handles, is investments and things like that on behalf of the city.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I wanted changed when I came on board was the ability to buy commercial paper. Sometimes that has more favorable rates than short-term investments. And as that bond money was spent down, obviously there was less and less of it to invest while it was sitting in a holding pattern. So we wanted to maximize the interest that we can earn on those funds in the shortest amount of time we have. And that wasn't part of the portfolio before. So, we do everything we can to make sure that our money is working for us and making the most it can during the time that we have it.
Very good. Now, what haven't I asked you about today that you really thought and were hoping that I would? And it's okay if there's not anything, because, I ask these very exhaustive, open-ended questions that kind of draw people out. So,
yeah, I really don't have much there.
Okay.
So,
well, I work with Hiser and Ritchey.
I didn't have a burning desire to discuss anything else besides government finance.
Yes. Well, you know what? When you get up in the morning and you think to yourself, government finance, and that's all I'm going to think about today. So.
Well, I got up this morning and discovered that I had not closed the lid on the coffee pot, and I shot 8 cups of water across the kitchen floor.
Oh, well,
I had no coffee. But
happy
typical Monday morning.
Happy morning to you. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up today's show on that note. Many thanks to Kelly Blankenship, the City of Mansfield Finance Director, and also Nan McCartney and Sandy Messner for coming in today to share time with us. Our guest next week will be the incomparable Mike Clapper, a local broadcasting, sportscasting legend who's fresh off a weekend spent announcing the NCAA basketball tournament up in Cleveland. And we will finally have a voice on this show worthy of these airwaves. And thanks again to all of you for listening to the Newsman Weekly. I'll be back in a second to put a bow on this week's show. But until then, remember what Mark Twain said. If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.